Here's the thing, Michael, Stash, Andre. I feel really bad for Checo. The empathy in me takes over each and every single time when I think of the predicament that he faces as a 0424. Because he's never going to stack up favourably against one of the best that we've ever seen. One of the best drivers that we've ever seen pedal in F1 being the Dutchman Max Verstappen. How is Checo Perez going to cope in that car, which of course is designed, which favours Max Verstappen's driving style? Now I know Adrian Newey and Christian Horner have said ad infinitum that what they've done is design the fastest car for the current set of rules and regs. But we know that a car on the nose, whilst that might be right, a car that's on the nose suits the style of Max Verstappen. He likes it super pointy, mouse sensitivity settings on 12, as per Alex Albon on the High Performance podcast. You heard Ted Kravitz mention as much during his notebook post the Chinese Grand Prix. So how do you deal with that? If you are Checo Perez, the Mexican Minister of Defense, a dude who's driven cars all his life with understeer handling dynamics, how do you suddenly go and switch your driving style? Well, Carlos Sainz has done it, because he spoke to this as recently as the Chinese Grand Prix, saying that in order to get where he needed to be, he needed to tinker for his style, drive in an unnatural way until it became natural, tinker with the car settings until he could optimise for that. So why can't Checo do it? Well, each and every single driver is different now. This is the problem. Each and every single driver has a different handling dynamic and a different capacity to adapt in real time. This is part of the reason why Max Verstappen will go down on the Mount Rushmore of F1, not just due to the fact that he's so bloody quick and so strategically aware, but he can adapt to any car. As soon as he jumps out the cockpit on a Sunday, each and every single race weekend, he jumps straight in the sim. He's doing 24 Hour of Le Mans, the virtual version. As soon as he leaves Formula One for good and retires, he will be in one of those cars in earnest because he likes to adapt. We're dealing in 2024 in the era of the sim racer, the guys and the girls who are learning from the sim and bringing these lessons back. The tight lines, the short corner each and every single time, right? This is what they do. And this is what Checo Perez needs to learn how to do. It's what's lacking in his arsenal thus far. But yet and still, I still feel a level of empathy towards the chap because of the way they speak about him. You guys remember Helmut Marko's comments last year that I won't repeat, alluded to the fact that because Checo is of Mexican heritage, that he's different in terms of his focus to, say, a Sebastian Vettel or a Max Verstappen. That is abhorrent, absolutely. But again, when you put your Checo Perez cap on, how do you feel? How does that make you feel when a Red Bull consultant, an employee of Group, says those things without repercussion nor ramification? How can that make you feel? And Ted Kravitz alluded to this in his notebook. He's been very, very good. Not brilliant, but very, very good thus far this season. Maybe not at the Chinese Grand Prix, but we'll come on to that in short order. He's done everything he needed to do, right? Second places. We're not expecting him to beat Max any longer. And so you see that accordingly in his pros, the way in which he talks about his prospects of winning a championship. No longer is he coming out and looking to usurp Max Verstappen. That's not realistic. And Christian Horner has praised him in that sense. Focus on the things that you can do and do them as well as you can. And the points tally speaks to that, right? As at 2024, because he's close to Max Verstappen. Not as close as he was this time last year, but close nevertheless. And Red Bull aren't expecting him to nail 25 points when Max Verstappen's in the race. That's too much. You want to make it objective smart. That wouldn't be smart. That'd be unachievable. Too aspirational indeed. But he needs to pick up seconds and thirds each and every single time. And if Max does DNF, that he needs to be then sniffing in and around 25 points. I don't think that's unreasonable. But here's where it gets techie for Checo Perez over the next few years. Because you guys remember, at this time last year, Checo was leading. He'd won 2 bloody races. He was leading Max Verstappen in the championship, in fact. But then what happened? And Checo Perez, cover your ears, mate, for fear that you get PTSD. Miami happened. And guess where we're going next? Miami. Lest we forget the Miami Grand Prix, Checo Perez dropped it on pole, didn't he? Max Verstappen had a nightmare of a qualifying session, qualified something like 7th or 8th, also run positions where Mercedes are getting used to qualifying these days. And then what's happened? It was a race that had 0 safety car. And of course, if you're coming through the pack like a Max Verstappen was that day, you are praying for a safety car, changeable conditions that suit you, that group the pack back up and nullify or mitigate the amount of time necessary, requisite to catch the first position. Max Verstappen that day didn't get any of that at the Miami Grand Prix, but yet and still absolutely nailed his teammate in the other Red Bull car, the RB19, Checo Perez. Max Verstappen was spiteful that day and decided, I'm never ever going to lose to Checo Perez ever again. You guys have heard him over the radio at Brazil's telling his team, telling GP and Christian Horner, I told you already last summer, don't ask me to give Checo Perez a place again because I intend on never losing to him ever again. That's the type of spitefulness that you're dealing with, Max Verstappen, and I don't hate it. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm seeing Checo with more consistency this season. B-men done, mate. I'm telling you, he's been good. Absolutely, his performance has been worthy of praise thus far, but I'm scared for Checo Perez. Here's why. These are your next Grand Prix, because you know, understeery, rear limited tracks, Checo Perez's forte, right? He's a street king, historically goes well. For the avoidance of doubt, he's driven cars with understeer characteristics all his life. That's why a couple of seasons back, when Adrian Newey, in the first instance, had designed a Red Bull with an understeery characteristic, Checo Perez was dominating Max Verstappen early on, until they recalibrated that handling dynamic of that Red Bull. And then where was Checo? Nowhere. A Max mean reversion. Max dominated once again. Here are the next Grand Prix. This is where it gets techie. Miami's up next. Imola thereafter. Monaco, Canada, Spain, Austria, Silverstone, Hungary, Belgium, Italy, Zandvoort. You guys tell me in the chat, which one of those tracks can Checo Perez beat Max Verstappen at? You tell me, because those are your historic, fast, sweeping, old school European tracks. The diehards, the purists track, a racer's track, each and every single one of them. Look at them: Britain, Silverstone, Spain, Madrid granted, Hungary, Belgium, Spot. Are you joking? Which one of those is a Checo Perez track? He's got to wait till like Baku, and that's in like 12 races time, or as these makes no difference. So the pain, winter is coming for one Checo Perez as far as his head-to-head with Max. Second is the best he or any one of the other 18 can hope for with Max Verstappen on that track in one of the most dominant vehicles that we've ever seen. But then there is more pomp and circumstance. There is more complication and nuance around Checo Perez's circumstance, right? And here it is. Christian Horner came out and said, we're not looking to give Checo Perez a contract yet because he's performing so well. The uncertainty, the motivation even, is providing Checo with a platform from which he can up his levels. And here's why Christian Horner's saying that, because initially, in the first instance, as I say that, it sounds unfair, right? It sounds harsh. It sounds more carrot than stick. But here's why Christian Horner's saying that, because you remember a couple of years ago when Checo Perez won at Monaco, having stacked it deliberately or otherwise in qualifying. You'll remember on the podium that Checo said, you know what, I probably should have waited a little bit, because my contract value would have been up higher post this Monaco Grand Prix win. That's what he said. That's what he could be overheard saying to his team principal, Christian Horner. And ever since that conversation, Checo Perez's performance did one of these. So Christian and Helmut Marko have learned that uncertainty in Checo Perez's circumstances might not be the worst thing for that fella's performance. And so they're using it as leverage. As bonkers as that is as a leader and a managerial tool, whatever works, right? We know that Christian Horner is a gangster. But then again, here's where the questions start coming, right? Because Perez Sr. has started yapping. And again, he's talking to the handling dynamic of the car, calling into question Red Bull's tendency to not only build a team around one Max Verstappen, but to design a car for his strengths. And that is chaos. Here's what Checo Perez had to say. Matthew Brown, my guy of NC Paddock. Here's what Checo Perez's dad had to say. Put the blame at the Red Bull door. Checo Perez continues to struggle with the car in something that we have not detected. Speaking to the Mexican media outlet Esto. The car is set for Max. Max drives with all the grip at the front, and Checo has driven all his life, and all the time he has driven with the grip at the back. So today Checo has to adapt to a car, and Max does not. Oh, and this is what Ted Gravis is speaking to, right? The argument has been reignited, therefore, and I don't know where I sit on it still. I'm not sure who I believe. I know for a fact 2015, 2016 is a precedent when Toro Rosso employed Carlos Sainz Jr. and Max Verstappen. Then, if you're going to use that as a case in point, as an example even then, Jos Verstappen only allowed Max Verstappen into the Red Bull Junior program on the provision, of course, that they were to do as he said. That was the message that was communicated to Helmut Marko. You've heard the story a gazillion times around qualifying when they sabotaged Max Verstappen, let him go out too late. He's too young to do Sebastian Vettel thing and pull together a hot lap at the last and in the dying embers of a qualifying session. Don't do that again, they said. Franz Tost disagreed. The team, as Toro Rosso, is to act uniformly. Equal treatment for both Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen. Helmut Marko said, no, mate. We'll lose Max Verstappen if we do that. Do what I tell you. Act in Max Verstappen's interest, he told Max Verstappen's side of the grid. Simple fact, says NC Paddock F1 God tier YouTube channel, that people seem to forget, including Checo last year, that he was brought in to be the support act. He's doing better. As long as he finishes in podium, you don't need Carlos. Oh, Matthew Brown, NC Paddock F1, it's chaos, bro. And this is where it's harsh to talk in those terms, because I remember, listen, Checo is no slouch as a driver. He's all right, man. Like, you guys remember the Racing Point victory from the back of the grid and all this other stuff. Like, he's not a slouch. So to talk about him in those terms, that he needs to set his sights, he needs to measure and manage his own expectations. You are a second driver, Mexican Minister of Defence, notwithstanding some of your god tier exploits behind the wheel of an F1 car. I don't know. My heart breaks for the fella. Mexican Minister of Defence. Damn near won Max Verstappen a championship by himself in that last race. I don't know. It feels wrong almost to talk about this dude, to not put some respect on his name in this sense. But again, you guys have seen the interview. If Checo Perez is going to enjoy himself, thrive, extend his tenure at one Red Bull, Nico Rosberg has spoken to. There's a couple of things that he needs to do. And Nico Rosberg loves to talk about this god tier colour commentator, by the way. Holy smoke. Way to put on a show this weekend. Nico Rosberg and Karen Chanduk. Man who I didn't think had a sliver of personality in him. God tier dynamics and chemistry between those two. The meta is what they are. But here's what Nico said before. Firstly, Checo, in order to in order to carry on in this vein, you need to ignore the media and press, right? Because they're always going to have something to say about it. Oh, Carlos Sainz is in there next. It's a stingy offer from Christian Horner, and that's why Carlos Sainz Jr.'s dad was talking to Christian Horner at the Chinese Grand Prix this weekend past. Tack on a couple more zeros on that offer and we have a conversation for Carlos Sainz Jr. to go and drive in that second seat alongside Max Verstappen, currently positioned to seat at either Audi, currently known as Sauber, or Red Bull, or Mercedes' Carlos Sainz Jr., depending on who puts that offer in front of him. Secondly, what else do you need to do, Checo Perez? And coming from Nico Rosberg mind, and here's why that's important. Because in 2016, Nico Rosberg beat one Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton, and he had no right to. On natural talent alone, Nico Rosberg wasn't even in the same arena as Lewis Hamilton. Had no right to beat him, had never ever beat him ever in any formula, and they've been racing all their life since they were young pups and teenagers. Never even got close to Lewis Hamilton did Nico Rosberg, but Nico did everything for a year. He locked himself away in the cage, he trained and he ate and he slept Formula One, got himself a sleep doctor, barely saw his family. He went hard, took the bloody paint off his helmet to save himself a couple hundredths in terms of lap time, owing to the weight that the helmet cost him. That's the level of commitment, right? In a conversation with Nico Rosberg, between Nico Rosberg and Alain Prost, Nico asked Alain Prost a similar question. What were the lengths that you had to go to, Alain? Alan talked about one time when he was testing and he put one set of compounds, say to put the hard compound tyres on the left side of the car, front left and back left, and then put mediums on the other side just to test it out, just to see if it worked. And these are the lengths. This is the sort of industry endeavour that these guys were prepared to go to overcome a natural talent, a god-tier natural talent in Ayrton Senna, to overcome a god-tier natural talent in Lewis Hamilton. So if anybody can talk to this, it's Nico Rosberg who can talk to this, to Checo Perez's current circumstance, trying to overcome one of the best natural talents that we've ever seen in F1 history. And here's what Nico said: sometimes you got to get your elbows out, mate, cause some trouble. Now I know they're baiting you with the prospect of a new contract or Red Bull, but you've got to make up your mind, Checo. Now, you don't need to pronounce it in front of the world's press and media. You don't need to talk to it. But internally, you need to be very clear about your objectives. If you want to be a champion and you want to be a Max Verstappen, you're going to need a lot inclusive of luck. Luck, remember, is where preparation meets opportunity. So the one of those things that you can control, Checo Perez, is preparation. Go and have a word with Nico Rosberg, Macon, Jomo. Go and have a word with him. Get the blueprint. You will need good fortune. You're not going to beat Max Verstappen for 20 races if you're going head to head. You will need for him to have more DNFs than you. But in addition to that, you need to be prepared. You need to be smashing out the gym. You need to get the sleep doctor. Shouldn't have any paint. Your helmet needs to be black. Checo Perez, you shouldn't have any paint on there. You can't afford the extra weight, chap. You need to do everything in your power. Going to and from Mexico is not going to cut it, chap. Especially not for the European leg of the championship. These are the lengths and breadths that we have to go to as professional athletes if we're going to overcome somebody who's ostensibly more naturally talented than we are. And Nico Rosberg, that's exactly what he was saying. Use devil, skullduggery, upset the apple cart, say something very cheeky about Max Verstappen in the Dutch press as an example. All this harmonious interaction with him, that we're friends, that's not going to cut it, mate. If you're planning to get some victories over the next 20 races or so, or even win the championship, dare I say it, that's the type of approach that you need. And I'm not sure at the moment, currently, that one Checo Perez, the Mexican Minister of Defence, is prepared to do that. I will be honest with you. Eddie said Nico beat 7-time champion Nico Rosberg. This is true Polish, but he was fortuitous in his circumstance. Remember, they changed over the bloody pit crew. Lewis had loads of reliability that year, but again, you've still got to give Nico credit, right? Because he still went out there and did it and executed, and that's what Checo Perez will have to do. He'll have to hope and cross his fingers that Max has those things that Lewis fell foul of in 2016. It will have to happen, but you need to be, if you are Checo Perez, smashing it out the gym. You need to get the sleep doctor, the race notes. You need to be developed, due diligence at every single track, excess time in the sim, because that's what Max Verstappen's doing, for crying out loud. 2016 was tough on Lewis fans, absolutely making. I cried. I think that, yeah. I absolutely cried. Nico is gifted, but to me, Nico was good, but he was industrious. And again, in my old age, as my beard greys, I've come to rate this level of industry more and more. Back in the day, when I first came to be an F1 fan, I was all in love with Senna because of how the natural flair and the talent that he had, right? But now, he's come to rate like the Carlos Sainz Jr. as he's becoming and learning to, like, retraining as a driver and learning new styles, adding bows to his cap. I rate it highly. Hybrid says, Checo gets faster pit stops by a 1/10 or 2 because he hits the stop points better than Max. Is that true, Hybrid? I didn't know that. I did not know that. But it's not as if, it's not as if they're wanting for a 1/10. You saw the double stacks from Red Bull this weekend past. Bloody 4 seconds for a double stack, 2.1 and 2.0. Bloody Dora, what are we doing here? But I digress. He's hoping that Checo can nail it, man. Let me touch on Toto very quickly again before I run away. I feel like I've killed him, haven't I, to death? Do I even talk about Toto again? Oh, Matthew Brown, you're far too kind, sir. Do I talk about Toto again and Mercedes? Because it's getting chaotic. I'm talking to my guy Peter Windsor tomorrow, and I want to pitch this at him. Is it time for Toto to go away? Does he need to go home, as I've suggested on the last stream? Because, listen, everybody's got a number, right? Everybody has a number, whether you're Toto, Wolf, Lewis, whoever. Everybody has a number after which you're doing one of these. After which you've hit your peak, and it's a downhill there on in, right? And as I look at Toto Wolff these days on the pit wall and see him on Netflix Drive to Survive with his family, listen, that's okay. That's all right. Sometimes your tenure in F1 comes and goes. Again, for the avoidance of doubt, everyone has a number. And I think Toto Wolff, seeing the figure that he's going, hearing his sound bites, talking all this stuff about Lewis Hamilton and the importance of the engineer over the driver, whilst those things might be true, how does that benefit you, Toto, or the team that you manage and team principal? Do you think that by telling the truth in those contexts at that time that you are motivating the team? By doing the backhanded compliment of Lewis Hamilton, do you think George Russell will look favourably upon that somehow? Do you think Team LH/Colt LH will continue to buy merch on the back of these quotes, notwithstanding they're leaving anyway? Silverstone will be red next year. You can take that one to the bank. It will not be luminous green or silver or black. People won't be wearing Silver Arrows Mercedes colours next year at Silverstone. They probably won't even be wearing them this year. You might see more red than you would expect. You'll definitely see more red than you did last year. I'll tell you that from now. So then, Toto, what's the answer? What's the solve for this technical Rubik's Cube? I know what the solve isn't. The solve isn't to go in front of the world's press and media and say these things that you're always saying, Toto, because it's not helping. It's not edifying. I don't know how you're looking to. How does that advance the movement? How does that not disenfranchise a fan base entire? How does that not disenfranchise an already disenfranchised Sir Lewis Hamilton? No offence, Ted Kravitz, but you haven't driven an F1 car. He apparently loves to associate RB20 to why Max is so good. You know where he's got that from, Matthew? You're too kind, Noir. Go and watch the High Performance podcast, and Alex Albon speaks specifically to the handling dynamic of the Red Bull when he was there. This isn't Ted Kravitz saying it. I know what you mean. Ted can be a bit rogue sometimes and talk out of turn, but this isn't Ted Kravitz saying this about the handling dynamic. He's just regurgitating what Alex Albon said, and again, he's got first-hand experience, right? He described it as the mouse sensitivity. The steering, he described, was like if you set the mouse sensitivity to like 1,000. He said it was just really difficult to drive. Noir, hi Cameron, so disappointed in Toto. Really immature comments. He just seems unable to deal with Mert's shortcomings. The pressure is getting to him. Noir, it's so bloody techie. It is so techie, this. Go on then, let's talk Toto quickly. The counterpoint. The counter argument, Jomo, you're a legend. I'm enjoying the stream. Hit the like button. Jomo, moderator extraordinaire, an absolute legend. Go on and let's get techie with Toto for the next 5 to 10 minutes. Toto is God tier as a team principal. You don't win 8 constructors championships and 7 drivers without having the minerals right. But there's a very different set of skills required to take a team from what Ross Brawn built from the ground up and continue it, kind of nudge it forward, right? Continuously improve it. It's a very different skill set that you need to do that than to turn around the ship entire 180, because that's what they require now, right? Now the waters are choppy. And they weren't previously. They had durable competitive advantage by virtue of their split turbos and a nicely tapped on downforce. What now? No durable competitive advantage. Ergo, they need to turn this ship around 180, and it's a very different set of skills required to execute that. And I'm not sure at the moment. Notwithstanding some short-termism and confirmation bias on my behalf, I'm not sure at the moment, April of 24, that Toto is exhibiting those skills. I'm not sure that we're seeing those talents manifest. And again, there is some short-termism and confirmation bias laced in my saying that. But the comments are just bloody ad infinitum at this point, man. Like, every single time, he's like, he can't even open his mouth without putting his foot in it. Everybody's getting it. Lewis, the team, the engineers, Mike Crack, like they're all just, do you know what I mean? Too much truth isn't good in this circumstance, Toto. Sometimes, mate, you just want to be a bit more pragmatic. If it means you lying and saying something that's false in the eyes before the world's press and media, just to make sure that you don't demotivate a Lewis Hamilton, that you don't cheese off a King George Russell of King's Lynn, Norfolk, that you don't disenfranchise your engineers, the guys and girls at Brackley and Brixworth, then lie. Do you think Christian Horner would? That you've heard me say a gazillion times on this channel that if I'm in the trenches each and every single time and I need to take a team principal with me, I'm taking Christian Horner each and every single time. Take that to the bank. I wouldn't even hesitate. I wouldn't hesitate for a second. Christian Horner, because he will lie and cheat and stick. That's the dude that I need alongside me. If we're in war. If we're in the trenches, I'm taking Christian Horner every single time. Because all that Toto Wolff cares about is bloody sporting etiquette and being a gentleman and truth. And I'm not interested in that. I don't give a monkeys for that. What do I care for that if I'm Lewis Hamilton? I want to win. Why do you think Lewis is moving to Ferrari? You think if Lewis thought that he could still win at Mercedes, that he'd move to Ferrari? What, just for gusto? Behave yourself. Honestly, it's too much right now, but you know what? I'm hopeful. I am hopeful that Toto Wolff can turn it round. Realistically, it's not going to happen before 2026, is it? And between now and then, I want to see progress from them. As a closeted Mercedes fan, considering jumping ship to go across to Alpine or someone, I'm hopeful that they can do the gap analysis and make trends right, make steps in the right direction. That's what I want to see. That's what I'm hoping for. Jomo, you're an absolute legend. 1 month member. Matthew, I agree. I don't doubt Alex has said, but Ted clearly has an opinion on Max, and it definitely isn't subtle. Fixes we've come for Merc. Matthew, I'm going to respectfully disagree. So I think you mischaracterise one Ted Kravitz. I see why you allude to bias in Ted. I think the problem with Ted falls victim of, not dissimilar to Dodo, to be fair, Ted falls victim a lot of his truth and his lack of hesitance to speak truth. His truth, whether you agree or disagree with it, right? He just spews, shoots first, asks questions seconds. That's what Ted Kravitz will do. And listen, love him or hate him for it, but you know what? I think we need more of those in F1. I would be honest with you. Macon says, I really wonder if Christian is worried about losing Max like Daniel. I don't think so, Macon. Alpine, oh, the humanity. Macon, that's where I am, bro. Honestly, sir, I've had absolutely enough of Mercedes. Lastly, let me say this. I was, do I say this now? And start crying. No, right, look. Lewis means a lot to me and my old man. Like, we've been watching F1 all our lives, and when Lewis came in, obviously as a person of colour, it just meant a lot. We never thought we would see, similar to Obama as a president, we never thought necessarily that we would see a person of colour in F1, because it didn't feel like it was a thing that was doable. It didn't feel like it was realistic. As much as we'd love to see it, diversity wasn't something that F1 represented up to that point. So then when you see me go scorched earth on Toto each and every single time, you will understand in that context, right, that Lewis was our guy. He was like a unicorn of an F1 driver, one of the most, if not the most brilliant that I've ever seen, and someone that represented like change in F1. And so to see in 2024, we've now wasted 3 of Lewis Hamilton's best years owing to technical arrogance on the part of Mercedes. What, because they can't grasp ground effect? Like that's why. I don't want to explain nor justify some of my scorched earth moments when I'm talking about Mercedes, but that's why. The naysayers out there will say, well, you weren't saying about this boring stuff when Lewis Hamilton was that. Yeah, well, I was. It's just that I never had a podcast to talk to it in like 2015. This thing started in 2016, right, which was ostensibly a very exciting season between Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton, notwithstanding the dominance of the Mercedes. But I only say that to say this. The reason why I get so frustrated about Mercedes is because Lewis Hamilton's latter stages of his career, the past 3 years, are wasting. We are missing out as F1 fans. We've been denied the rematch of 2021, the competition between 2 of the greatest that we've ever seen, just because Mercedes can't design a bloody set of wheels. Can't do it. Can't do it, won't do it. And that, to me, as a lover of the sport, as a big fan, as a lifelong fan of Lewis Hamilton, and as a lifelong fan of competitive upper echelon sports, the highest level, I find that frustrating. I'm not going to lie. Hence why you're going to see me keep coming on here, going scorched earth at Mercedes, the guys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth, and Toto Wolff also. Now, to speak the truth, prosecution rests. No further questions, Your Honour.